Hi, I'm Rad Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Okay, so you've heard of shows like Succession and The White Lotus and Squid Games. You probably watched them. But there's also, these are just some of the hugely popular Eat the Rich TV shows we've been seeing lately. But what about Your Friends and Neighbors and Nine Perfect Strangers and Sirens? There's been so much storytelling about wealthy people behaving badly, and to weigh in on whether we've just had enough, we got Saloni Gajjar and Nicole Froio. Welcome to Commotion, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Listen, Saloni, you wrote an article in AV Club about this trend we've been seeing on TV. Can you walk us through how we're defining this genre, this Eat the Rich genre?
Yeah, so I mean, very broadly, Eat the Rich is basically a type of story that uses whatever genre it might be packaged in, whether it's horror, comedy, drama, all of the above, because everyone likes to mix everything now. But basically, it's how these genres are used to satirize class difference, corruption, elitism, just like a divide between rich and poor, where it's satisfying, rewarding to watch, the rich get vilified, even if it's fictional. The point is to criticize the wealthy people and maybe open the eyes of the audience to, societal power imbalances. I mean, you've seen it all the way back to like Arrested Development, which is just a laugh out loud funny show, to Succession, like you mentioned, or movies like The Menu, Triangle of Sadness, The White Lotus. So stuff like that, where you're watching TV, where you're watching rich people maybe get checked, vilified. It's almost fun to enjoy their downfall. That's basically Eat the Rich.
Okay, well, look, Nicole, Saloni just mentioned one of the shows that made this genre hugely popular. Take a listen to this.
How can we salvage this?
You still want to pursue this?
Yeah, of course I want to pursue. I want to announce. This is part of the whole thing. This is the secret sauce. Do we need to sweeten the offer?
You want to bump the offer another point? Do you want to call your dad?
Do I want to call my dad? No, I don't want to call my dad. Do you want to call your dad?
No.
No? Do you want to call your dad? Does anybody want to call their dad? Okay, nobody wants to talk to their dad, so we've started, so let's buy this company.
That's from the very first episode of Succession, which premiered 7 years ago. Nicole, why do you think this show struck a nerve when it came out?
I think Succession came out during a time where this genre wasn't so well trodden. As Saloni has pointed out, this has become a real big trend in TV and film. And so I think at the time it was like a fresh angle on rich people and how much they are bad people. And I think that an important thing about the way that the narrative is told is that the narrative or like the storytelling has no empathy for the main characters, and the viewer is completely free to hate them.
It's interesting because, I actually felt like I did empathize with those characters as much as I also hated them, and I thought that was the kind of the beautiful balancing act that Succession really pulled off. But look, picking up off of Succession and this trend that's arrived, we're seeing a bunch of new shows that are exploring these Eat the Rich themes. And, we asked you both to pick an example of one that isn't really working. And Saloni, this was your pick.
The Patek Philippe Nautilus sealed 18-karat white gold blue sunburst dial, water resistant up to 30 meters. Like that will ever come up. Like the ads say, you never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation.
So,
well, the next generation tells time on their phones, so I figured no one was going to miss this one.
So that was not an ad, but a moment from the TV show Your Friends and Neighbors, where Jon Hamm's playing a newly broke hedge fund manager resorting to petty theft. Saloni, where did this show fall short for you?
Yeah, I mean, what you said, I really agree with, because Succession made me empathize with these people who you are actually supposed to hate, and you do. And I think with Your Friends and Neighbors, that just doesn't happen because, like you said, Jon Hamm, for those unfamiliar with the series, he plays someone who has worked at Wall Street for 2-3 decades. And, you have to assume he's amassed a certain amount of wealth. He lives in this wealthy community, white picket fence, upstate New York, living with fellow rich people. And he has to maintain that facade of elitism, which is why he resorts to stealing from his neighbors, like an expensive watch. And then not only is he stealing the watch, but he's giving viewers a rundown on what that watch means. And as you heard in the clip, he ends it by saying, no one's going to miss it. Who cares? And that's kind of the question I had while watching the show. Why do I care about this man who hasn't been developed and who, could do many other things in life to make money? And again, like I said, you have to assume he's worked at Wall Street for 3 decades. He has money. But he instead is stealing from his neighbors because, there's nothing else he seems to want to do. There's also a lot of navel-gazing commentary in the show throughout about the morality of his act, about materialism and greed. But I think the show does it in such a very surface level way. There's no insight, there's no analysis, and neither is it funny. Succession was very funny. You would laugh out loud. In Your Friends and Neighbors, you're almost just waiting for the episode to end because there's nothing to laugh at, there's nothing to be entertained at. You're just watching John Hamm, who is a very good actor, kind of drifting through scenes, walking into his neighbors' houses that, apparently have no cameras, even though they live in a wealthy community.
Yeah. John Hamm bringing that very Mad Men energy to it too, right?
Correct.
Like, and
Yes.
I was gonna say, like, I was piqued by, like, I watched the first episode. I'm like, oh, there's some like film noir homage here. And I had my curiosity peaked, but you just kind of you basically confirmed that I shouldn't even bother going forward with it. Look, I mean, Nicole, that was Saloni's pick. Well, you picked this show.
What if we lost everything?
We're not going to lose everything.
No.
No. And if we did, honestly, I don't know if I'd want to live.
Why would you say that? What does that mean?
I just don't think at this age I'm meant to live an uncomfortable life.
So if you didn't recognize the Southern drawl in Parker Posey's voice, that's from the 3rd and most recent season of The White Lotus. It aired earlier this year. Nicole, why didn't you enjoy this season?
Despite Parker Posey's incredible deliverance of that line, I think that The White Lotus season 3 really failed at building an arc where I should be caring about whether this family would lose everything. And it's similar to what Saloni said. It was very surface level. It was kind of, this happens a lot in TV and film. They see that something's working, so they repackage the same formula, exactly the same as Succession, but they don't actually do the work of like building our relationships to these characters. And I think that leaves us lacking empathy and also an actual analysis as to why these people should feel bad about being rich.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, as a contrast, I feel like this season was kind of missing, like, we didn't really get to know the hotel workers as well this season, right? And really to draw out that contrast between these classes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that really drew me to the first season, where we were really seeing the contrast between the people serving the guests and the guests themselves, and how that class system works, particularly during a holiday, which is, supposed to be like this fantasy of where you're resting and like there's no work, but obviously there is work by the people who serve you.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I mean, Saloni, you wrote that the terrible rich people, I mean, they've worn out their welcome. So why are you feeling that way?
Yeah, I do feel that way. I feel like, as we've been saying, I think as a society, to me, Succession was at a peak when it aired. It aired at the right time. It capitalized on this phenomenon, but also it thoughtfully portrayed, the twisted and toxic family. But I think, in the past few years, even just this year alone, especially after January, we're seeing so much in real life about how the wealthy, usually white, usually male, tend to get away with a lot of things. I mean, just turn on the news. And so I think to make TV like this work, it's going to take a lot more than just, the obvious satire and just like surface level humor. To make the fact that we've been talking about empathy, we really do lack that in real life sometimes when we're watching the news. And so when we turn on the TV, you want to see people you care about, instead of commentary that's really just too on the nose and too harrowing and too flashy and, just lacking substance.
Well, it's interesting 'cause, I mean, like Nicole, I mean, we like Saloni was talking about, like, we have all this satire, but maybe not enough empathy. I mean, we have all this satire about capitalism favoring the wealthy and then disenfranchising everyone else. And then in the real world, like nothing has really changed. Like these shows haven't moved the needle culturally in any way. So what do you think should come after satire?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that we are living in a reality where it's not even like every month or every year, like every day, things get more expensive. And so watching the rich enjoy whatever it is, caviar, trips to Italy or to wherever, it's just, and even if they, get something coming for them, like it's not satisfying because we're still living in this reality. And I think that it really shows I'm a pop culture critic. I love culture and I love watching TV and film, but it really shows the limitations of a industry that is controlled by profit and capitalism, right? Like we're not doing these TV and film art to change the world. We're doing it to profit. And so like I think that it really requires a really huge shift into what we think about in terms of culture and TV and film and why we do it. So after satire, I think we have to maybe rethink why we're doing these shows. And if it's to make people more rich, then we're basically just like replaying a cycle forever.
Interesting. So then, I mean, Saloni, considering what Nicole just said and then your own criticisms about the genre, like what is the antidote to this? Like what comes next?
Yeah, this was a question I was thinking about when I was writing the piece about how we need a break from rich people. And I do think that an antidote is kind of already out there and I want to see more of it. But to me, at least, I feel like this year, there's a lot of TV that does reflect a collective sense of anxiety and nervousness at, things like government. And there are stories about resistance and challenging authority. I mean, look at something like Andor, whose second season is based entirely on rebellion and speaking up. Something like Severance, which is a huge TV show, and you might not look at it and think this is a story about resistance, but season 2 ends, sorry about spoilers, but season 2 ends with employees of this mega evil conglomerate standing together ready to fight them. And to me, when I was watching it, I was like, hell yeah, unions. And there's common side effects, like an Adult Swim TV show that's really like raging against the machine that is big pharma in a very surreal way. So I think there are stories out there about anti-capitalism that feel easy to connect with, that feel cathartic to watch. And I wish there was more of that. But also to Nicole's point, these are stories on like Disney and Apple platforms. So it's very ironical. It's very funny. But I do think that it's important to watch characters who speak truth to power. And that's maybe the next step, instead of just satirizing it, but like actually going deep and finding that connection with characters who actually do reflect the sentiment that we're feeling now.
Okay, I mean, can I just say you had me at Andor? Nicole, I got 30 seconds left, but I wanted you to chime in. What do you think we should be seeing more of?
I agree with everything Saloni said, so thank you so much for that. But essentially, I would like to see more explorations of the girl boss as like a dominant figure of a capitalist system that is profiting off of our labor. I think that that's a very underexplored theme within that genre. Like I loved how it was done in Succession, but I think it could be done more forcefully. So for me, that's what I want to see next.
I'm looking forward to that too. Listen, thank you both for coming here and talking this through with us.
Of course, thank you.
Saloni Gajjar is thank you. Saloni Gajjar is a TV critic at the AV Club. She's in New York. Nicole Froio is a writer and translator from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
I'm making this song stick in your head. Maybe this bitch over her mess. I like it when they all watch. Baby, make the beat drop.
I'm Rad Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. So that's a track called Freedom off Kesha's new album, Period. And so this is her sixth album since she blew up in 2009 with her smash hit TikTok. But it's her first record as an independent artist after leaving her former producer, Dr. Luke's label, with whom she's had this ugly decade-long legal battle. Maura Johnston is here to tell us all about the new album. Hi, Maura.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Listen, I want to set the scene a bit here. So this legal fight between Kesha and Dr. Luke, I mean, it began in 2014. Kesha accused him of sexual and emotional abuse, and Dr. Luke countersued for defamation. And as these lawsuits dragged on, I mean, her contract forced her to continue releasing like new music on his label. So how do you think the legal drama impacted how her music was received at that time?
Well, I think people have always been rooting for her, even since TikTok. She was somebody who really stuck out amidst the pop landscape of the early 2010s when she broke through. People like there are songs that people wanted to support because of the message they were sending, like Praying, which was on 2017's Rainbow, and which was very, very apart from the sort of like when EDM of the time. It was this big ballad with very sparse production and a powerhouse vocal, because she's a really great singer. And people really enjoyed High Road, which came out in 2020, which was a little bit rootsier. It had Sturgill Simpson and Big Frida on it. But there was this kind of lurking sort of not dread, but just sort of like uneasiness about the fact that in the streaming economy, if you are listening to a record on a label, you are constantly supporting that label. So that was a little strange. So I think people have been really looking forward to the fact that there was a point when she was going to be able to do her own thing.
Okay. Well, then, I mean, when you think about then that transitional journey, that moment, Kesha now reemerged with this.
Oh, you say you love me? That's funny. Well, so do I.
That is Joyride, the lead single from Kesha's new album, Period. Maura, so what do you make of this as her comeback move?
I love this song. I'll just straight up say that. But, it's interesting because I feel like that kind of like kitchen sink type of alt pop that falls under the loose umbrella of what's called hyperpop, it was definitely inspired by her, in part. She was somebody who always wanted to go the extra mile. Like I remember interviewing her in 2012 and we were talking about her album Warrior, which was coming out. And she was like, yeah, I had a whole glam rock record that was, scrapped. And I was like, what? That would have been amazing. And she put out a record with the Flaming Lips around then. And then, once the legal stuff was sort of beginning to take shape in 2015, she played a show at a dive bar in Nashville where it was all like punk rock versions and really like noisy, thrashy versions of her old songs. And then she also did a version of Whole Lotta Love. She's somebody who I feel like has always been interested in like music as a whole, and the kind of environment that she came out of in the late 2000s, early 2010s was very rigid and very very rigmarole. Like she even told me that on her first album, Animal, there was a no guitars rule, and it seemed like she wanted to do that. Obviously, she has her mom who was a songwriter in Nashville too. So I think that with Joyride, the fact that it was it had so many like interesting moving parts, like the norteño accordions and that kind of like, very commanding, almost church-like chorus. And then obviously a very catchy refrain that even had a little car horn in it. It was a really good portent for what Period was going to be like.
Interesting. When you describe all those musical styles and influences colliding together, the headline to your Rolling Stone review is starting to take shape for me, because that headline is Kesha's new record is a mess, but in a good way. Right?
But in a good way.
Yeah. So can you unpack that for us?
Well, yeah, I think that, she's somebody who just wants to throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see what sticks and what is hooky. And so the record is really chaotic, and there are lots of odd touches, flights of fancy, just trying stuff to see if it works. And I think that's what a lot of people want to see, because people not only admire her as a person for standing up for, herself, but they also are interested in her as an artist and somebody who takes these ideas of pop. And obviously she grew up amidst, Nashville, which is like the sort of most regimented pop music there is. and really taking it in exciting places. On the closing cathedral, she sings, "Every second is a new beginning. I died in the hell so I could start living again." And there she's not only asserting herself as a survivor, but she's also allowing kind of, the word cathedral means come and commune over, so we can all be one together. And so she wants people to sort of come around her with this wild party that has a lot of different moving parts, and they might not all work for the listener, but they work for her, which I think is what's crucial.
Interesting. So listen, I mean, look, we mentioned Kesha's breakthrough hit, TikTok, already, right? And I think it's important to note that Kesha, has also been reassessing that song, specifically this moment.
Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy.
Hey, what up,
Grab
girl?
my glasses, I'm out the door. I'm gonna hit this city.
Let's go.
So that was TikTok from 2009. But lately, Kesha's been singing it like this.
Wake up in the morning like P. Diddy. Grab my glasses, I'm out the door.
That bleep is hitting hard right now. Okay, so that is an update of TikTok that Kesha shared last year in response to the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking case, and she says that she'll do a proper re-recording of that track when she could legally do so. So Maura, I mean, it's not hard. It's hard not to notice how the coincidence of Kesha having gone through this long sexual assault legal battle, releasing this new album just the day after the verdicts came in the Diddy trial. The Diddy trial, of course, dealing with similar narratives of power and abuse in the entertainment industry. So can you, how do you see that turn of events then shaping the reception of this new album?
I think it's a very tough time in America right now for those sorts of for women to stand up for themselves, for a lot of reasons that I probably don't need to get into in detail. And I guess, with the Diddy line in Kesha's song, it almost underscores how deep the corruption and rot run, But at the same time, I don't want to burden Kesha with speaking for everybody, because she's one person, she's one artist. And this is one record that was recorded, obviously, before, some of it I think was even recorded before the trial began. At the same time, I'm really glad that this record is out now and that she's touring now, because I feel like it's an important corrective / reminder to people that there can still be a better way and better things to happen, and pushing through and standing up for yourself is something that it's hard. It's sometimes really frustrating, but it can result in you being a fuller person.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, can you take us through, it's been 16 years since TikTok blew up, and you just recap this whole journey she's been on outside of her music, but also through her music. Where are you seeing her influence today?
I see her influence a lot on the fringe, in interesting places. On the fringes of pop, but you could say that TikTok swaggered, so Miley Cyrus's Bangers could shake its butt, certainly. And definitely, there's a lot of, I think, independently released, not indie pop, but independently released pop songs, which are very much more common now thanks to technology. You see that kind of willingness to break the mold, to be outside the box, to be weird. And I know that she allowed me to be weird. It's a cliche, right? But at the same time, I think that she did open the door for that. At the same time, she was very, she brought the Black Lips on tour with her once. She very much had countercultural elements and countercultural interests in a way that was kind of reminiscent of Madonna in the early 80s, when she was coming out of the Lower East Side art scene. But I think that, it was definitely also, I'm going to bring everybody along for the ride, no pun intended, obviously. And that way, it wasn't like a culture vulture type of thing. It was just hey, this is what I'm interested in, and you might be interested in it too.
Okay. Well, can I ask you then, we just have 30 seconds left, but do you see Kesha as a sort of pop elder, or are you still reckoning with her as a contemporary artist still moving the needle?
I think both. I think right now just there's a general stasis in culture that has led to a lot of things that had a lot more free reign of marketing before the every channel on age. Beyonce had one of the biggest tours of the summer. Lady Gaga had a huge record. But at the same time, she's still pushing boundaries. And I feel like on Joyride, she sings, "You want kids? Well, I am mother." So she's clearly embracing that elder, she's 37, which is not old. But, the sort of seasoned stateswoman status and while, bringing everybody in for that party and pushing forward.
Okay, thank you so much, Maura. I mean, I feel like you're
Thank
giving me
you.
such a deeper appreciation when I go back to listen to this album.
Thank you. It's really fun.
Maura Johnston is a freelance music journalist in Boston. You could read her review of Kesha's new album, Period, at rollingstone.com, and you can listen to Period wherever you get your music. All right, before we go, I want to tell you about a new contest we've got on up on Instagram. Maybe you heard our chat last week about a new series of books that's coming out called Canada Classics. We'll be giving away 6 classic Canadian books to one lucky winner. Go to Commotion CBC on Instagram to find out all the details. That is it for the podcast today. I'm Rad Simonpillai. See you tomorrow.